Okay, this is December the 20th, the last Sunday before Christmas. And so, because all the important people are here, we're going to start just a little bit early today. Like I say, with the intention of beating the Methodists to Loopies.
There you go.
So, before we get started, we'll open with a word of prayer. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, the creator of all that we know and see and do, and of our very bodies. And we're thankful, Lord, for this time of the year where most of the world remembers that you sent a Son, a Savior, Emmanuel, to this planet. And it's upon him and that life that he lived and the death that he died that we stand here today convinced that we someday soon will see you face to face. And as we read these words left by John in his revelation, we just are amazed that you have written history in advance, and because you are who you are, all things that you have reported will come to pass. And we're particularly overjoyed that you give us this hope that we might escape this planet Earth bypassing death. And so we look forward to the day when we hear that ram's horn trumpet blow and that call to come up here. And we just look forward to that day in Jesus' name. Amen. This is one of the most interesting chapters, in my estimation, in the book of Revelation. We're getting into the really meat of the subject now. And, of course, last week was extremely important as far as I'm concerned. It was important and interesting because if you look at the book of Revelation and how it is written, there are things in there that you just simply can't understand until the time is right. And that is the nature of God, to be able to write something that seems meaningless to most generations until the right generation comes along and they see things and they say, oh, boy, I understand that. How can you field an army of 200 million? Well, in the first century, there weren't 200 million people. I mean, things like that make no sense. And being able to control the entire civilized planet by one being, by one person, impossible up until this generation. And now, because we do most all of our business transactions electronically, somebody can get in there, and whoever controls that computer controls your life, if you allow it. So here we are in chapter 13, and lesson number 70, number 7. This must be an important lesson because it's lesson number 70. And as Chuck Missler would say, it's part of the heptadic structure of the book of Revelation now, because there are 7 all over the book of Revelation, and 70 is just a tenfold magnification of the letter of the number 7. So today we'll review lesson 69. I've got a scripture of the day which is tied into the signs of the times, and then we'll do Revelation chapter 12. I was going to do 12 again. Thank you. You got to watch me, I'll sneak up on you there. Reviewing chapter 12, which was lesson 69, we saw that that sign in the heavens. That word heavens is characteristic of what you see when you look up. So we know it wasn't heaven wherein dwells God and the angels, but it was the heavens above us. And that sign was most likely Virgo. And if it was Virgo, being clothed with the sun and the moon at her feet, refers to an astronomical condition that occurs at least 2 times in the last several thousand years. Once in 2 BC and another in 2017. And that marks a particular moment in time, which is Rosh Hashanah. And as you have heard me say, the Jews believe that the world was created on Rosh Hashanah, and on the 6th day of the creation process, on Rosh Hashanah, God created Adam, and 4,000 years later, on Rosh Hashanah, second Adam, which is Jesus, was born. And now he's going to return, and apparently that's going to be on a Rosh Hashanah, a feast of the trumpets. Now, one of the most interesting parts about chapter 12 is this man-child. You listen to commentators all over, and most of them will say, well, that's Jesus. But the facts don't support it. First off, he was caught up. And that word, harpazo, however you pronounce it, it's rapture in rapio in the Latin. That's where you get our word rapture. Jesus was not raptured. It says that he was received up. A different terminology implying a slow transition, which is confirmed by the fact that the disciples saw him go and watched him for a long time. So we find that the very act of him leaving implies talking about the church. The church in its form as the body of Christ, a male child. And then we find the woman who gave birth to the male child was protected, caught away into the desert, protected for 3.5 years. And we remember from Matthew 24, the Lord stating that, boy, when you see the armies of the heathen camped about Jerusalem, then those who are in Judea flee to the hills. Well, this is where they flee to. Be protected for 3.5 years. And then we have the dragon symbology, the dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. And obviously this is a final expression of Satan and his control over planet Earth. The 7 heads are 7 major countries that at one time or another controlled Jerusalem. And their last expression is going to be through this 10-horned kingdom, which some believe is a revived Roman Empire. Personally, I believe it's a revived Medo-Persian Empire. And the 10 horns are 10 kings, which will come up along with him. And 3 will be uprooted, as Daniel says. And 7 will jump on the bandwagon, and they will be led by an 8th, who was part of the 7, but was and is not, and yet will come. Another riddle that we will unravel when we get to chapter 17. And we believe that this passage is talking about the final fulfillment of the first prophecy of the Scripture in Genesis, talking about putting enmity between thee, the serpent, and the woman, and between her seed and thy seed, and he will bruise the head of the serpent, and the serpent will bruise his heel. And that story has been told and retold throughout history in varying stages and incarnations. Anybody ever wonder where, you remember the Greek hero Achilles? Remember, he was dipped by his mother in the river Styx, but she held on to his heel, and his heel didn't get dipped. And so he had an Achilles heel, meaning that that was a weak point on him, which is no doubt a Greek myth based upon this original prophecy, the wounding in the heel. Any questions about Revelation chapter 7?
How come man-child is always capitalized if it's not Christ?
Because I capitalized it.
I thought I saw it capitalized.
The man-child, there are elements that seem like it's talking about Christ. The only problem is when Christ was born, he was not immediately caught up as a child. And probably shouldn't be capitalized. I believe it means it's the church. And it's a particular incarnation of the church, that particular church that is alive and living at the time of these events. And these events have to occur to be consistent with the Jewish understanding of time, which I believe God gave the Jews, have to occur at the end of a period called the Olam Hazeh, or 6,000 years after the creation of Adam. Well, as we understand time, we're there. We ought to be seeing this. We are seeing this. And we'll see more of it today, because the lesson we're talking about today introduces the Antichrist. Only it doesn't call him the Antichrist. He's got all sorts of other names, and we'll get into that as we go. So at any rate, any questions on that? Yeah.
How do you rationalize the bride of Christ versus a male body of Christ?
That's an excellent question. I'm not sure I can rationalize it. I put it in this fashion. While we are on the earth, we are the church, the ecclesia, which is a feminine noun. But when we are in heaven, we are kings and priests, which are both masculine. So as we are caught up and out of here, we are of the body of Christ. We're going to be kings and priests. These are all masculine. And so that's kind of the way I rationalize it. I'm not real comfortable with it, but it's the only thing that makes any sense out of this. And as time goes on, we'll have additional enlightenment on that issue, but it's not perfectly clear. There are some things in Revelation that are muddy. The best I can do is based on the evidence. It sure sounds like the church. It sure sounds like the rapture, and the timing is consistent with what we know about the revealing of Christ and his end-time purpose to protect the church. We know from our study of Rosh Hashanah, absolutely the church has got to leave here on a Rosh Hashanah. I think the evidence is overwhelming. And then when we hear or see in this chapter an allusion to the removal of this man-child on Rosh Hashanah, that is, I mean, we're right there in the same area again. We got two intersecting lines at the same place. So I think that tends to heighten the probability that what's being talked about here is the church, because it's a child. We are children of God. While we are on planet Earth, we simply don't have the mental faculties to be called a man. But a man-child, well, it's a son-child. So we are a son. Just as God sent his son, we are part of that. Yes?
It seems like all the really, really, really important stuff happens on Rosh Hashanah.
It sure seems that way, doesn't
The
it?
really important.
Mm-hmm. The big high points in creation, if you believe the Jews, and like I say, the very first word in the Bible is Bereshit, and the Kabbalists rearranged those letters to read Aleph B'Tishrei, which is the first day of Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah. And so there's all sorts of evidence which seems that God has big plans on Rosh Hashanah. And once again, after we study Rosh Hashanah in some detail, we find that it is the last trump that blows on Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't blow any other time. So the early church knew when to expect the rapture of the church. Okay, I told you I was going to do chapter 12 again. Hey, and this is going to tie in for the sign of the times, but this is over in Joel chapter 2. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. And I will also upon your servants, upon the handmaidens in those days will I pour out my spirit, will show wonders in heaven and in earth, blood, fire, pillars of smoke. And the sun shall be turned to darkness, and the moon into blood. Actually, the literal doesn't say moon into blood. It just says moon blood or blood moon. Before the great and terrible of the Lord come. Is it at the day of the Lord? No, it's before. We've just had a blood moon before. Maybe that before is like the passage requires, that we see it before the bad times come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord has said, and in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. So we know there's bad times coming, but there's this interesting piece. People will dream dreams and see visions. Now I call your attention to one of the stories on the internet. Supernatural dreams open doors for Jesus in Iran, not reported by the mainstream media. Fabian, that's a guy who leads a house of prayer in Kurdistan. That's the old Medes, by the way, the Kurds. And he said he's met a number of people who've had supernatural encounters with Jesus. These are Muslims. People in the streets and in the refugee camps from places where ISIS has occupied, even people from here are encountering Jesus in dreams and in visions, Fabian said. One refugee reported in a dream, I still remember some marks on his face, and he was wearing a crown, a king's crown on his head, he recalled. Very strong brightness came out of each part of his body, and many people were bowing down to him. I still live on the memory of that dream. It's still alive in me, and it's with me every day, he said. I remember in my mind the sense that I saw in heaven. He showed me many different things since I believed in Jesus, but that dream became a turning point in my life. And the CNN News asked if others are coming to Jesus inside Iran. They said, yes, many people are coming to Jesus through a dream. You cannot imagine how Jesus is appearing to them. So, maybe a fulfillment of Joel. So all of the signs of the times aren't bad. Sounds like a pretty good sign in the way I see things. But when I was in Kurdistan, the Kurdish people that I talked to, they went through the motions of being Muslims, but none of them had any zeal or fervor behind it. In fact, a lot of the more intelligent ones didn't want to have anything to do with it. They just did it to get by. So now we are seeing in the Kurdish region dreams of Jesus, and they believe them. And these are very passionate people now. Of course, you'd be passionate too if you had a dream.
You wouldn't tell anybody though there.
Well, yeah, you might get your head whacked off, but apparently there are a lot of them that are professing, up to and including death. Okay, now we're in chapter 13. And I stood on the sands of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Now the interesting thing is this word sea. Sea in the Greek is the word thalassa, and it is used specifically of the Mediterranean or the Red Sea. So this beast that comes out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, that means 10 kingdoms, 10 nations, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. I would suggest to you what we're seeing here is the final kingdom of Satan. Satan, as we know, is in control of the world. He's particularly in control of this region of the Middle East, the region that bounds the Red and the Mediterranean seas. And we can show in history where there were 7 nations that came up onto the scene, 6 at least, up to this moment in time, that at some moment in time possessed or trampled down Jerusalem. And those entities are Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then Rome Part 2, which is this nation that's about to congeal right now before our very eyes. And these are all in the region of the Red and the Mediterranean seas. We're not talking about the Atlantic or the Pacific. It's narrowed down to this region of the world. How do you suppose that is? Well, my analysis of it is Satan is a great, what do you call it? Well, he doesn't have an original idea, one. He wants to control the world, the center of the world, from what God declares to be the center of the world, and that's Jerusalem. Control Jerusalem and his people, and then you win. But he is destined to lose. And it's a mystery to me. I've never understood how in the world Satan thought he was going to win a battle with God. This guy must be delusional. A lot of his followers, by the way, are delusional. Moving right along. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard. Now, his feet were like a bear. His mouth was like a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his seat, and his great authority. Well, we know the dragon, Satan. He has control over that region of the world, in fact, all nations of the world to one degree or another. And the beast was like a leopard. What was the symbology of the leopard in Daniel? What?
I'm looking, I wrote them down.
I know what it is. You told me 5 times, but I keep forgetting. It's where Alexander the Great came.
You got it. You win a new donut. Brand new donut. No, it's Alexander the Great.
That's all.
Remember, he looks like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear. Who? Well, that's true. That's their national symbol. But in Daniel, the bear,
Babylon.
whose one side was lifted up higher than the other, was a sign of Medo-Persia. And this is saying the feet are like the feet of a bear. That's where he stands. So where does he stand? He stands in the region of Medo-Persia. Now, he's got a mouth like a lion. Who was the lion symbolic? Huh?
Iraq, Babylon.
Babylon.
Have to open this one so I can get
You can have another
I
donut.
got another donut.
here. I already had 2.
You can have 3.
Well, make it even, have 3.
Round it off. So the guy Spike, well, the lion, who was the big mouth of Babylon? That was King Nebuchadnezzar, right? And he had elevated himself in his own eyes to the point that he stood over Babylon one day and was remarking what a marvelous place this was that he had built. And by my hand have I, and it went on all these eyes, and all of a sudden God struck him down. And for 7 years, he ate grass in the field like a wild animal. He got his comeuppance. Now, Chuck Mutzler says, and he's probably right, that after that event, Nebuchadnezzar blessed the Lord. And most likely we'll see Nebuchadnezzar in heaven. So he got his penalty, but he learned from it. He recognized that there is a God in control of everything and that he wasn't in control of anything. So at any rate, the guy speaks like Nebuchadnezzar. And he has his power by virtue of the power Satan. Now, this particular verse, I want to read some out of Daniel chapter 7, just to refresh your memory. This is Daniel 7, verse 1. It says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. And he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. And Daniel spake and said, I saw my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. Now here we see another reference to the Mediterranean. Wherever this event is occurring, it's something in the region of the Mediterranean. And 4 beasts came up out of the sea, diverse one from the other. And the first was like a lion, had eagle's wings. And I beheld the wings were thereof plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon his feet as a man. And a man's heart was given to it, as Nebuchadnezzar. And behold, another beast like it, a second, like a bear, raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth, and in between its teeth thereof. And they said thus unto it, Arise and devour much flesh. The bear. There were 3 major battles fought between the Medes and the Persians until they decided to amalgamate. So we know that the first one, the lion, that was Babylon. Second one, Medo-Persia. And I beheld, and lo, another one, like a leopard, which had upon its back 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. This is a characterization of Alexander the Great's kingdom from Greece, and his 4 generals, which eventually possessed the kingdom after the death of Alexander the Great. Lysimachus, Cassander, Seleucid Nicator, and Ptolemy Legat. And after this, I saw in night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and brake into pieces, and stamped the residue with its feet, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. This is that final kingdom. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. Now, we got 11 horns. before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the behold, in this horn there were eyes like the eyes of a man, and mouth speaking great things. We are hereby introduced to the Antichrist. He's coming up with these final 10 nations. He will uproot 3 nations. Now, we know who the Antichrist is. Between all estimations and all the evidence points to this guy, Ali Khamenei, as the Antichrist. He is going to uproot 3 nations. If you survey the Middle East right now, would it be very difficult to uproot 3 nations? I can think of 3 that would go in a heartbeat. That would be Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. He could get those practically overnight.
Well, he's laughing at the United States, so.
What's that?
He's laughing at the United States, so that could be a 4th, because he's going.
Well, how can I argue? She's my wife. I can't argue. I'll pay for it. And I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was as white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool, and his throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels like burning fire. I don't know what that word wheels means, but there's something going on there that's rotating in this throne area. But this is a bizarre place that we really can't know what's going on there. Maybe someday we'll see that. And a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him, and thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and judgment was set, and the books were opened. Woo! Sounds like Rosh Hashanah, doesn't it? We're opening the books, the book of the Ruachim, the Zadakim, and the Benonim. And I beheld, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spoke, and I beheld until the beast was slain, his body was destroyed, and given to the burning flame. So we have kind of a synopsis here of what's going on. When this final guy shows up, there is judgment. He will be slain, and his body completely destroyed. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. And I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion, glory, and kingdom, and all people, nations, language should serve him, and his dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom, which shall not be destroyed. Now that's the stone kingdom of Daniel. And that kingdom is where our destiny lies. As he came with the clouds of heaven, that phrase reminds us of when the church is removed from the earth. It says that we leave in clouds. Now, it doesn't mean we're leaving in white, steamy things up there in the sky. It means when we leave, we're going to be like a cloud. There's going to be so many enclosed in white that it's going to appear to the observer on the planet that a cloud left. Okay, moving right along to Daniel 13, and I saw one of his heads, and it were as if it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. This has been, one of those head scratchers that folks have looked at for years. And you can see, some say, well, that's a nation like Rome that was dead, and now it's come back to life again. But that isn't what it says. One of its heads are clearly a person, a singular, a king. And his wound was healed. Whoever this guy is, he was dead, or thought to be dead, and then came back to life. And the world wondered after him.
This sounds future, though. It doesn't sound like something that happened in the past. This sounds like something that will happen in these days.
We be living in the future. We are 2,000 years almost from the writing of this book. We are seeing with our very own eyes the fulfillment of this scripture. This is now in past tense. It has always been future until today. And let's look at all the other criteria that this guy has to meet. First off, The Antichrist must appear at the end of the Olam Hazeh, as defined by the Jews, 6,000 year period starting with the creation of the world. We are there now. Must come from Medo-Persia, the feet of the bear, as we have just learned from Daniel chapter 7. He must come from the Seleucid portion of Alexander the Great's kingdom, which I'll show you later on. It's Daniel 11, verse 21. And he must seize the kingdom by intrigue, Daniel chapter 11. He must gain control of the richest parts of the kingdom, and he must distribute plunder and booty to followers. He must be wounded to death, yet live. He must have a withered arm. This is Zechariah 11. He must be a false god shepherd. This is Ali Khamenei. He must have dimmed vision and one on his right eye. We can't confirm nor deny that. But the reading of that word dimmed vision implies dimmed vision by virtue of age. And this guy's old. He's the old.
Can you watch it?
He's almost as old as I am. May even be older. He must lead the country. He must make a covenant with many. He'll be different from all preceding leaders because he is a false god shepherd. And he must be strong with a small group. Every one of these criteria I can show you resides within the Iranian leader Ali Khamenei. So, if he be the guy, then there's got to be a covenant made with him. We thought we were seeing that covenant in the recent past. But it says he must confirm the covenant. That covenant was never confirmed. And there is this last Rosh Hashanah, which I was absolutely convinced we were out of here, but God has intervened. He intervened on Rosh Hashanah, number one, with a sandstorm. He delayed Rosh Hashanah for 2 days. And in my mind, looks like he was saying, you got 2 more years to wait. And that gets us to Rosh Hashanah 2017, which is, according to Daniel chapter 12, that may be when we're out of here. I don't know. Be my best guess right now, though. But all of these other things, this guy fulfills every last one of them. I'll just read you here this passage over in Zechariah 11. It says, and I cut asunder my staff, even my bands, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. Who's Israel? Well, if you can remember far enough back on lesson number 17, I told you who the best guess of Israel in the end times was. You look for the descendants of Ephraim and Manasseh. And where did they end up? United States and Great Britain. It says, I'm going to break my brotherhood between Judah and Israel. Who is currently in possession of the Holy Land? Judah. How are they being protected? Ephraim and Manasseh. And guess what Ephraim and Manasseh are doing right now? They're backing off. And as soon as we're out of here, God have mercy on Judah, because there will be no one on planet Earth to support her, and she will be nearly destroyed. 2/3 cut off, 1/3 passed through the flame. Moving along here, it says, and the Lord said unto me, take unto thee yet the instruments of a foolish, that word is perverse, shepherd. And I would suggest to you that anyone who follows the Quran, that is a perverse doctrine. It is that of Satan himself, in my estimation. For lo, I will raise up a shepherd in the land, which shall not visit those that be cut off, neither shall seek the young one, nor heal that is broken, nor feed that which stands still, but he shall eat the flesh and fat and tear the claws into pieces. In other words, this guy is amazing. And woe to the idle shepherd, that's false god shepherd, that deserts or leaves the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm and upon his right eye, and his arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened. And that word in the Hebrew can be interpreted, without doing violence to it, dimmed by virtue of age. Here, Ali Khamenei, he's a false god shepherd. He is a mullah. He's the top dog mullah in Iran. He controls the whole country. in June 1st, 1981, in a mosque, while he was preaching, someone who obviously didn't like his sermon put a bomb in his tape recorder and blew up right next to him, destroyed the function of his right arm. Obviously hit his right eye too. We are not sure how much damage was there because it's not reported, but it must have been some. And he bled out. And upon arrival at the hospital, they pumped him full of blood and got him started again. And he lived. An interesting comment that he made, which you can find on YouTube. He said that while I was dead, most people who have a near-death experience see Jesus. And they see heaven. Or at least Christians do. What did Khomeini see? He said, I was suspended between heaven and earth. He didn't see heaven nor earth. He was suspended in between. Some clue that wherever he was, it certainly wasn't heaven. He didn't get to see heaven. And so this prophecy here demands that whoever this guy is have a completely dried up arm. And his right arm is clean dried up. It don't work. So I would suggest to you that if you're looking for a candidate for the Antichrist, you got one.
So the beast is the Antichrist, right?
Say again?
So the beast is the Antichrist.
That's another name for him.
13 verse 3, it says, one of the heads of the beast gets killed or whatever, not the beast itself. So there are people arguing that it's not the Antichrist himself who actually goes to that, but one of these
Now, wait, what verse are you quoting from there?
13
13:3?
one of his heads was wounded to death.
Yeah, well, it's one of his heads.
Right. But the beast has all of his heads. So it was
Right. It's kind of a, well, this particular head of the beast is the one that was wounded unto death.
Right. But that means that if the beast is the Antichrist, he's got all his heads, that it's one of these.
Yeah, how you would
other-
explain the difference between the beast with 3 heads and one of his heads being, well, apparently this is the dominant
Well, they
head.
actually say those heads are different kingdoms.
Yeah.
Like that, so it sounds like that might happen to somebody in one of these kingdoms, but not the beast itself.
Yeah, so what you're pointing out is the distinction between the beast and the Antichrist, the leader. Well, hold that thought, and I think some clarity will come here shortly. So, and they worshiped the dragon which gave the power to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? This beast says he looks like a leopard. I'm going to suggest to you that the reason he looks like a leopard is because of the way he acts in war. Alexander the Great, you couldn't beat him in war. That was his expertise. And when it says it looks like you can't make war with this guy, I'm thinking this guy has the elements of Alexander the Great's demonic power in him. So hold that thought and wait till we get to chapter 17. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemy, and power was given unto him to continue for 42 months. When this guy really gets his main power, it's in the midst of the tribulation period. We'll be gone. We won't be seeing that. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against the blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. Why does he care about them that dwell in heaven? Well, my analysis of it, them that dwell in heaven are those that were taken away long time before in clouds off of planet Earth. We therefore dwell in heaven. And he's not happy about that. Read back over here on Daniel 7 more. And thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom. And did I get this in the wrong place? No. And he shall devour the whole earth and shall tread it down and break it into pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. And another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first. And he shall subdue 3 kings. That is the guy. It's a fourth beast, beastly kingdom. Maybe that's a better analogy of the beast than just the fact that he is the Antichrist. He is certainly one of, well, he is this king that comes, really the 11th king in this whole scenario. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change the times and the laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time, times, and the dividing of time. And I remember when I first read that, time, times, and dividing of time? That could be anything. I mean, what kind of terminology is that? Well, fortunately, Chuck Missler, who never lets these things slide, he says that in the language, and I believe the language here was Hebrew, there is a word, time means one, and then they have a dualism word, which means two times. It's closely associated with our word both. If you have a both, how many do you have? You got two, right? So you got a time, a two-timer, and then a half a timer. So this time is based on the context and other prophecies we know is 3.5 years. Time, times, and half a time. So that's some understanding about that strange terminology. It's absolutely coincidental with 42 months. Back to Revelation 13. And it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over kindreds, tongues, and nations, and all that dwell upon the earth. Get that word, earth dwellers. That's those who are tied to the earth system. All of those people shall worship him whose names are not written in the book of the life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. There is a group of people that are destined for destruction. That's all you can conclude from this. And when you read John Calvin's analysis of our own situation, characterized by the word tulip, it says we are all totally deprived, but yet there is a group that God has decided in advance that he is going to save. It doesn't matter what you do. You can be a premeditated murderer. Just talk to David someday about that. And if you are called, you're going. Look at Paul, a fine killer of Christians. But he was called. He saw the light. And many of us saw the light at one point in our lives or another because you were called. You didn't have any choice in the matter. And that's why it irritates me when I hear preachers from the pulpit cast doubt on your eternal destination by virtue of the fact of your poor performance. Why, our budget is falling behind. People are going to hell because they don't give to the church. Well, of course, you don't hear that here, but I've heard it in other churches. I mean, and so they're sending you to hell for all sorts of reasons. The only problem is, if you are destined to go, no sermon's going to send hell. And it sets you free once you understand that, you know, your performance is inadequate. My performance, inadequate. The weights are balanced against us. But of course, we have the blood of Christ over here that balances the scale. So that's how we live in hopeful anticipation of what God's going to do. Okay, so if anyone has an ear, let him hear. And there are these that are from the foundation, they will be slain. And he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity, and he that killeth with the sword must be killed by the sword. Here is patience and faith of the saints. Wait a minute. How come we got saints here? I thought we were in the middle of the tribulation. How can we have saints in the middle of the tribulation? Well, that word saint, it's kind of misused by the Catholics. They think that they can nominate saints and make saints out of people. Well, you can't. If you've given yourself over to the Lord, you be a saint. So you all be saints. And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, and it had two horns like a lamb, and it spake like a dragon. Oh, now this is curious. He exercises all the power of the first beast before him and causes the earth and them that dwell therein, in other words, we got this earth dweller bunch again, to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. So here the beast is called, the one whose head was healed, he's called a beast here. Apparently there are more than one beast involved. But we're introduced to a new guy. He's kind of like the devilish John the Baptist. You know, Satan never had an original idea in his whole life. So he's going to introduce, he's got the Messiah character, that would be the beast. And now he's got a devilish John the Baptist that he's introducing to us here, who is going to exercise power, and he's going to force people to the Antichrist. And he doeth great wonders, so that he make fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. That'd be pretty. You can get a big crowd if you're going to do that. And he deceives them that dwell on the earth. The deception is not directed at saints, but these earth dwellers again. And that earth dweller image is people who are tied to the earth systems. These are not a part of the Ruachim. I'm sorry, they are not part of the Zadokим. They are a part of the Ruachim, the holy wicked. And by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in their sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by the sword and did live. We're talking Ali Khamenei here. Why would you want to make an image of this guy? It's the ugliest guy I ever did see. And he had power to give life to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Man, how this is all going to play out, I don't know. Maybe we can look over the edge of heaven. Maybe we can see how this is all going to play out. Actually, once I get up there, I don't care anymore. However it works out, it's fine with me.
Almost sound like Islam. If you don't believe in
Yeah,
Islam,
you either convert or die. And it's very consistent with the Islamic religion. And one thing, everybody is wanting to be sympathetic right now to the Islamic people. Because, they're good people.
Yeah.
The only problem is, I have yet to see a mainstream reporter read from the Quran, which directly says you convert or you kill them. How does this make these people wonderful? It's another mystery to me.
Pastor read the Quran several times now, and she cannot find love, the word love, or anything that's even close to it. There are many times about that killing if you don't repent and stuff is many times.
You convert or die. You're either with us or you're dead.
It's a great read though, at night,
Boy, yeah, how would you like to have that as your hope for salvation? Yeah. They never did explain to me, if the men get 72 virgins, what do women get?
72 Virginians.
I guess. How can I argue with such Aristotelian logic? Well, now we're getting into the good part here. It says, and he causes all, both small or great, rich or poor, free and bond. How many is that? That's everybody. To receive a mark that can be interpreted as a badge, by the way, in their right hand or on their right hand or in their foreheads or on their foreheads, such that no man might be able to buy nor sell, save he that has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. And here's wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. 666. Now, without doing violence to the interpretation, it can be interpreted, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the multitude of the beast, for it is the multitude of a man, and his multitude is in the name of Allah. And how in the world can you come with that conclusion? I'm going to show you. This is Codex Vaticanus. There are 3 codex, or books, collection of books, that contain all, and most of them more than all, of the books that we currently have in the Bible and dated before 400 AD. There's Codex Sinaiticus, Codex Vaticanus, and Codex Alexandrinus. All of their names indicate where they were found. One was found in the Vatican, one was found on the Sinai Peninsula, actually where they think Mount Zion was, but it ain't. And the other one was found in Alexandria, Egypt. Named after Alexander the Great, by the way. In the Codex Alexandrinus, here are the character set for Chi Psi Stigma, which has a numerical value of 666. The only problem with it is, if you were Arabic or spoke in Arabic or wrote and understood Arabic, you would recognize that symbol, those symbols, the X. That's not a Chi, really. It's really two crossed swords. And this symbol, which is Sti, with this line over it, that never appears that way in the Greek, but it does in Arabic. And then, of course, stigma at the end. Whenever you go to places like Erbil, Kurdistan, you'll have vendors on the street trying to sell you trinkets. And I bought some to bring home to my wife. And I didn't know what it said, but what it said was Bismillah in Arabic. And that means in the name of Allah. And this character set you will find in calligraphy form all over the Middle East, strange ways of writing, the same words which mean in the name of Allah. You've got a little necklace that's got a little bitty gold jobby on it.
And we're wondering why Satan is destroying our life.
That's why you've been cursed.
I'm gonna go throw it all in the garbage.
You've been cursed. And he did it.
I'm not sure you even kept them, but it was a necklace with a little bitty symbol that says Bismillah on it. I didn't know what it meant. And I asked the guy who was with me, what does that mean? And he said, it means God. But, well, it was God in his eyes, but it's really Allah.
Oh, I gotta go there.
Right there, Marilyn.
I need to know these things.
Now, Bismillah, or in the name of Allah, is the very thing that Islamic warriors wear on their heads or armbands, mostly on their right arms. And by the way, there are 99 names of Allah, and one of them is Karul Makarim, something like that, which translates the greatest of all deceivers. The counsel for the offense rests. This guy's Satan.
Greatest of all.
Greatest of all deceivers. To be.
And so this character set here, two crossed swords with that thing that looks like a stigma with a line over it, and something that looks like a Chi, Psi, and then the stigma at the very end. That is in Arabic the name of Allah. Now, skipping down here, according to Revelation 13:8, the mark of the beast is supposedly to be worn on the head and on the right hand. Islamic jihadists typically wear Bismillah on their forehead and on their right arm. This would be significant as the Hebrew word yad, which means hand or arm, both. So, you've seen the word Yad Anonai, which has a gematria of 5. So anytime you see the number 5, you think of the hand of God. Well, hand, remember, Christ was nailed in the hand? Well, no, he wasn't. He was nailed in the wrist. It is anatomically impossible to hold somebody up by nailing them through the hand. It would tear through. But you can if you nail through the wrist. And literally, this part of the arm is the word yad. And so here is, if you see somebody coming at you that looks sort of like this, they are carrying the mark of the beast. I couldn't find a armband. I couldn't find a photo on the internet of one of the jihadis with the armband on. But plenty of those.
He does not have loving eyes.
No, he certainly doesn't. And most of them like to cover their faces. Why would they want to do that unless they are ashamed of what they're about to do?
You're cowards.
They're cowards.
Which would indicate emotion, and I don't think they have it. Shane would indicate
Yeah,
that
you
they
felt-
feel some empathy.
Yeah, they have no human
They
compassion.
have no compassion or
No
empathy.
compassion.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see that in the eyes. They're dead eyes,
I've seen it,
basically.
literally.
And, yeah,
Could you go back so I can get a picture of that last thing you had with the writings on it? I'll take a picture of it and send it back. I mean, I want to have her see that. She isn't here.
Oh.
Can you go back to one
I-
slide?
the only problem, if I go back, I'll erase everything I
You
said.
don't want to do that.
Here, what you do is,
Oh,
but if you'll go online, I will get this online this afternoon, and you can take a picture of it.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
That's
This-
intense.
What's that?
That's intense.
Yeah,
Very intense.
isn't it interesting? I mean, like I said, Daniel was told, Daniel, this is not for you. But at the end time, knowledge will be increased. Well, the particular knowledge that Daniel was concerned about was knowledge of the understanding of prophecies. I mean, if for no other reason, the fact that we can understand so much of this stuff right now should tell you we're living at the end of the age. And as we see characters like Ali Khomeini come onto the scene, fitting absolutely every one of the requirements for the Antichrist, you've got to say, hey, time's getting short. So whenever the event is, it's some Rosh Hashanah real soon. The church has to be gone because we can see all of the events of the world leading up to a climax. Yes.
Didn't you say he has some kind of cancer or something, or he's about to die?
Yeah, he's got prostate cancer.
He's gonna make
Stage 4. He's supposed to be dead. So why ain't he dead yet? Can't explain it, but it looks like he is going to be miraculously caused to survive.
What year was that you went over there?
What's that?
What year was that? I can't remember. What year did you go over there and get?
Oh, what year did I go to Herbal? Oh, I couldn't tell you.
What house we were in?
Let me think. Which house were we in?
That period of time. That was in Brooklyn, wasn't it? We were on Tilford.
Well, I can't remember. I certainly do remember flying over Fallujah at 20,000 feet because I've never been an airliner that was doing this.
Okay, I'm going to your stuff.
Okay. Okay, enough for this lesson.